The terrifying encounter with a stalker. One evening, I was walking to my girlfriend Casey's house, which was 2 blocks away from mine. The neighborhood was peaceful, and I usually walked there at night without any issues. However, that night felt different. As I walked, I began hearing strange noises behind me. At first, it was just the sound of bushes shaking. I glanced over my shoulder but saw nothing. Trying not to panic, I quickened my pace. The further I went, the more sounds I heard, twigs snapping and footsteps behind me. The noises were unnerving, so I stopped and turned around. Again, there was no one in sight. I continued walking, trying to shake the fear. But as I neared Casey's house, I heard the quick, light footsteps once more. I turned again and still saw no one. When I arrived at Casey's house, I called her, explaining how freaked out I was. I had just stepped onto her driveway when she looked out of her bedroom window and waved at me. That's when she asked me, "Who's that guy behind you?" I turned around and saw a fully grown man crouching, following me just a few feet away. My heart raced as I screamed and ran to Casey's door, pounding on it. The man tried to grab me in a headlock, but I managed to break free as he quickly fled. Casey's mom let me in, and after calling the police, we learned that a dangerous man had been seen in the area. Casey's mom kept me there for the night, and I was driven home the next day, still shaken by the encounter. A disturbing knock at the window. On a stormy night, I was watching TV in my room while my parents and sister were elsewhere in the house. I always found the stormy weather relaxing until there was a monstrous bang at my window. I jumped up and peered outside. Through the heavy rain, I could see a figure pounding on my window. Screaming for help, I cracked the window open, and the man shouted that he was hurt and needed help. I told him to come to the front door, but when I turned to tell my dad, the knocks and shouts continued outside. My dad was about to open the door when the phone rang. The caller ID showed our next-door neighbor's number. My dad picked up the phone, and I could hear him say, "No way." He told me to stay away from the door and peeked out of the window. He saw the man crouching on our front stoop, holding a sharp tool. My dad called the police and warned the man to leave. The man eventually gave up and disappeared. But when we checked with our neighbor, we learned the man had been rummaging through their shed earlier, carrying an axe. The police found the crazed man a few days later. A mysterious voice in the basement. When I was a young child, I was watching cartoons in the living room when I heard my mom calling my name from downstairs. Thinking nothing of it, I called back, but there was no response. Moments later, I heard her voice again, this time from the basement. I walked down but found the basement dark and empty. As I began to climb back upstairs, I heard her voice once more, calling me from the basement. Terrified, I raced up the stairs and turned on the lights before peeking down into the dark basement. Still, there was no sign of my mom. Panicking, I ran back upstairs, crying for her. To my relief, she came rushing down from upstairs. I explained what had happened, and though she didn't believe me, she checked the basement to comfort me. I still remember the fear I felt, and to this day, I'm sure I heard something or someone calling my name from the basement that night. The Night's Walk, an unsettling encounter. My grandpa often takes his dog, Sherry, for walks down a dirt path near their farm. One evening during a routine walk at sunset, Sherry barked at a stranger with a hood who walked past them without acknowledging him. As they continued, Sherry kept barking and looking back. Upon turning around, my grandpa saw the stranger hiding behind a tree, watching him. Picking up the pace, my grandpa was soon startled by a hand over his mouth, preventing him from screaming. As he struggled, Sherry fought back, allowing my grandpa to retrieve his pepper spray. After multiple sprays, the stranger let go, and my grandpa rushed back home, safe but shaken. The fake head and the abandoned house. Growing up in California, I often spent time with my best friend, Stevie D. One night, we decided to visit an old abandoned house in our neighborhood, notorious for being a spot for gang activity. Upon arriving, Stevie noticed a face peeking through the curtains of the window. At first, we thought it was a Halloween decoration, but as we got closer, we realized it was a real human head, leaking blood. Panicked, we ran out, but it wasn't until later that we learned the head belonged to a victim of the Crips, used as a gruesome message. We also heard noises from upstairs, suggesting someone was still inside. The strange businessman and Clorox Incident. One evening, a man arrived at our rural home and spoke to my mom about opening a business. He handed her a Clorox container as a sample before retreating to his minivan, where 5 other men were waiting. My mom, sensing something was wrong, told them to leave and threatened to call the cops. The men quickly sped off, and we never saw them again. The whole encounter felt like an attempted scam, and we were fortunate that my mom was cautious enough to act quickly. Backcountry skiing and the dangerous stranger. My friend Hugh and I set out for backcountry skiing in a remote area. After skiing alone for a while, I encountered a friendly man who asked for directions to my campsite. He seemed normal until I realized that his gears looked eerily similar to Hugh's, and his voice was off. When I asked about his wife, he grew closer and started moving more aggressively. Panicking, I grabbed a flare gun, only to be attacked with a knife in my leg. I managed to fire a flare to signal for help. The man fled, but a rescue helicopter soon arrived, and we were both saved, though badly shaken. The babysitting job. When I was 14, I took a babysitting job for a 6-year-old boy named Cody. His parents left minimal instructions, just to order pizza for dinner and to keep him out of their room. They mentioned that Cody was a bit different from other kids, as he often played with his imaginary friend, Agnes. At first, I thought this was just a normal part of childhood imagination, so I didn't think much of it. Cody seemed sweet and harmless, and I settled in to watch TV while he played on the floor. Strange occurrences. As the evening went on, I noticed something odd. Cody was talking to Agnes, who appeared to be sitting in front of him, though no one was there. The weirdness escalated when one of Cody's toys, a small cube-shaped one that usually required effort to turn on, started working on its own. I asked Cody about it, and he calmly said, Agnes activated it. A cold shiver ran down my spine, but I didn't want to overreact, so I turned the toy off and tried to focus on other things. The unsettling discovery. Later, I went to the bathroom to freshen up, leaving Cody to play. When I returned, I heard a knock on the door, but when I opened it, Cody wasn't there. I looked down the hallway, and I noticed one of the doors creaking open slowly. I approached, expecting to find Cody playing a prank, but instead, he was sitting on the bed, staring at me. I asked who had opened the door, and he simply said, Agnes? Freaked out, I picked him up and spent the rest of the night in the living room. When his parents returned, I didn't mention what had happened. A few weeks later, when they asked me to babysit again, I never called back. The eerie feeling about Agnes stayed with me, and I couldn't shake the unsettling experience.